My name is Maya Richardson, and for 28 years, I've been invisible in my own family. 3 days ago, we buried my grandparents, Theodore and Eleanor Morgan, in Phoenix's most prestigious cemetery today. Their attorney's office felt like a pressure cooker ready to explode. Before I tell you what happened in that room, let me know in the comments. Have you ever been the forgotten one in your family? The one they overlooked? Hit that like button if you've ever felt invisible, because what I'm about to share will change how you see family forever. My father, Reverend David Richardson, sat at the mahogany conference table like a king awaiting his crown. His megachurch, Destiny Cathedral, had made him Phoenix's most recognized spiritual leader. Next to him, my mother Victoria dabbed at tearless eyes with a silk handkerchief she'd bought specifically for the funeral. My older brother Cameron and his wife Ashley whispered excitedly about the vacation home they'd purchase with their inheritance. Then there was me, the adopted niece they took in at 5 when my birth mother died. The charity case, the background character in their success story. Mr. Bernard Chen, my grandparents' attorney for 40 years, adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and cleared his throat. The room fell silent. The last will and testament of Theodore and Eleanor Morgan, he began, his voice steady and professional. Written and notarized 6 weeks before their passing. My father leaned forward, confident he'd already mentally allocated the funds, probably toward that new church expansion he'd been planning. Mr. Chen continued reading the standard legal language until he reached the distribution clause. That's when everything changed. To our granddaughter, Maya Richardson, we bequeath our entire estate, valued at approximately $28 million. We trust she understands why. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then my sister-in-law Ashley's gasp shattered it. Her hand flew to her chest, her eyes calculating faster than a stock trader. What did he just say? My father's face transformed. The benevolent pastor mask cracked, revealing something cold underneath. Chen, there's been a mistake. Read it again. Mr. Chen, who'd clearly anticipated this reaction, didn't flinch. There's no mistake, Reverend Richardson. Your parents executed this will last month with 3 independent witnesses present. The language is unambiguous. 28 million? Cameron finally found his voice. To Maya? But she's just a librarian. She doesn't even own a car. This is insane, Ashley shrieked, standing so abruptly her chair screeched against the marble floor. She manipulated them, 2 senile old people. Mrs. Richardson, Mr. Chen interrupted firmly. Theodore and Eleanor Morgan were of completely sound mind, I can assure you of that personally. My mother Victoria's composure shattered. They left us nothing? Their own son? The man who built a church that serves thousands? I sat perfectly still, watching the performance unfold. This was the family I'd served for 23 years, the family I'd made myself small for, the family who'd never once asked what I wanted. Sound mind? Victoria's voice rose to a shriek. David visits them every week. That was a lie. My father hadn't visited in 7 months, not since grandfather Theodore called him out during Sunday dinner. A man's ministry begins at home, David, Theodore had said quietly. And your home seems built on fleecing your congregation for luxury cars. My father had stormed out. My mother had followed, calling her in-laws ungrateful fossils. I was the one who visited every week. I brought groceries, watched gardening shows with grandmother Eleanor, listened to grandfather Theodore's stories about building his pharmaceutical company from nothing. They'd given me something my adoptive family never had. They'd seen me. This is a cruel joke, Cameron muttered, shaking his head. Maya, you're not seriously accepting this. He turned to me, attempting his protective big brother expression, the one he used when he wanted something. You know this isn't right. We'll split it fairly. 4 ways. 4 ways? Ashley scoffed at her own husband. She doesn't deserve a full share. She's the reason we're in this mess. And there it was. The truth they'd always believed, but rarely said out loud. I wasn't really family. I was the adopted outsider who'd somehow stolen their inheritance. I'd been silent through the entire reading. Now I slowly turned to face them. My father's calculating eyes, my mother's hatred, my brother's entitlement, Ashley's naked greed. Then I looked at Mr. Chen, who watched me with sad but steady eyes. He knew what my grandparents had known. This 28 million wasn't just money. It was a test, a weapon, a revelation. I took a deep breath and addressed my father directly. Reverend Richardson, I said, my voice clear and cold. He flinched. I'd never used his title like that before. The will is clear. I'll be honoring my grandparents' wishes. Maya, listen to me, my father began, his voice dropping into that smooth, intimidating pulpit tone. No, I said simply. Ashley exploded. She lunged across the table, not at me, but at the documents. I'll fix this, she screamed, grabbing the will and tearing it in half. Mr. Chen didn't even stand. He simply sighed. That's a copy, Mrs. Richardson. The original is filed with the court. And I should mention, this entire meeting is being recorded. Ashley froze, the torn papers in her trembling hands. My mother looked like she might faint. My father closed his eyes, a vein pulsing in his temple. Cameron stared at me with something new in his eyes, not brotherly concern, hatred. You did this, he whispered. You poisoned them against us. I stood, gathering my purse. The small purse that held everything I owned that mattered. No, Cameron, I said quietly. You did this to yourselves. I looked at Mr. Chen. I'll contact you tomorrow to discuss next steps. As I walked toward the door, my father's voice stopped me. It wasn't the preacher's voice anymore. It was something darker. Maya, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. I didn't turn around, I simply walked out, leaving them in the wreckage of their own greed. I thought that was the end of it. I was so wrong. The real war was about to begin. What would you do if your entire family turned against you overnight? Would you fight back? Or walk away? Drop a comment below. And make sure you're subscribed, because part 2 reveals the shocking secret my grandparents had been hiding. Trust me, that 28 million? It was just the beginning. The truth is so much bigger, and when my family finds out, they'll lose their minds. Don't miss it. I drove back to my parents' house in a daze, the 28 million figure echoing in my head. I didn't feel joy. I felt the cold certainty of an approaching storm. The house in Paradise Valley looked the same as always. Pristine. Perfect. A showcase for a pastor's family. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew everything had changed. The air felt electric, dangerous. I went straight to my childhood bedroom, the small room with faded wallpaper they'd never bothered to update, and pulled out my old duffel bag. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I couldn't stay. I was folding a pair of jeans when the door burst open. All 4 of them stood there, blocking my only exit. My father, David, my mother, Victoria, my brother, Cameron, and his wife, Ashley. They didn't look like a family. They looked like predators who'd cornered wounded prey. My father entered first, closing the door with a soft, final click. His face had transformed into what I called his Pastor David mode, the expression he used to manipulate his congregation. Maya, he began, his voice that smooth baritone that had convinced thousands to empty their wallets. We were all emotional today. Things were said, but we're a family, and God has blessed this family with an opportunity. He walked to my small desk, pushing aside my library books with casual disrespect. This 28 million, it's a test from the Lord. He's testing our humility, our commitment to his work. He pulled out a thick stack of papers from his jacket. I've already had our church attorneys draw up the paperwork. Very simple. You sign the inheritance over to the Morgan Family Community Fund. It'll be managed by the church, by me, for the good of the community. He placed the documents on my bed, right on top of my half-packed clothes. Just sign this, Maya, and we can move past this ugliness. We can be a family again. I looked at the papers, then at him. I said nothing. I just picked up a t-shirt and continued folding. His smile died. That's when my mother lunged forward. The grieving daughter act was gone. Her face was red, her eyes narrow with rage. "You ungrateful brat!" she shrieked. "After we took you in. We fed you, clothed you, gave you a home when your mother died, and this is how you repay us?" She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin like claws. "I am your mother. You owe me everything. You think you can sit on 28 million while your own parents struggle? You're a snake. Just like her." Her meant my biological mother, her sister, whom she'd despised. I suddenly remembered something. I was 18, holding a thick envelope with shaking hands, a full scholarship to UCLA, my ticket out, my new life. Victoria had found me in the kitchen, staring at it. She didn't say a word. She just smiled, took the letter from my hands, and tore it into perfect squares. "Good daughters stay home and serve their families," she'd whispered, dropping the pieces into the trash. "You don't need foolish dreams." Now she wanted 28 million for the life she'd trapped me in. "Let go of me," I said quietly, pulling my arm free. "Or what?" Cameron sneered from the doorway. He stepped forward, his bulk filling the small room. "You'll call the cops? Don't be stupid, Maya." Ashley, who'd been silent, suddenly clutched her stomach. I noticed for the first time that she looked pregnant. Very pregnant. "Maya, please," she said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "Don't do this to us. To me." She looked up with tear-filled eyes. "Cameron and we're having a baby. We need a bigger house. This baby deserves a good life. You wouldn't deny your nephew, would you? You wouldn't steal from an innocent child?" The four of them closed in around me in that tiny room. The air became suffocating. "Sign the papers, Maya," my father commanded. "Don't be selfish, Maya," my mother hissed. "Just do it, Maya," Cameron added. "It's not like you deserve it anyway." "Think of the baby," Ashley whispered, rubbing her belly. I stood slowly. My duffel bag was half packed. The papers sat on my bed, a contract for my silence, my submission. For 28 million, they were willing to destroy me. But my grandparents had known they'd known exactly who these people were, and they'd trusted me. I picked up the heavy stack of papers. They all smiled. Relief flooding their faces, Ashley's tears vanished. My father's grin widened. "I knew you'd see reason, daughter," he said. I held his gaze. Then, very calmly, I tore the stack in half. Then in half again. The sound of ripping paper was deafening in the silence. "No," I said. The silence that followed was terrifying. My father's face went from pastoral calm to a deep, dangerous purple. Victoria's mouth opened in a silent scream. Cameron looked confused, as if his brain couldn't process what he'd just seen. It was Ashley who reacted first. "You witch!" she screamed. My father raised his hand, not to strike me, but to silence everyone. His eyes were cold, dead. The mask had finally fallen completely. "Brenda," he said to my mother, his voice terrifyingly calm. "Cameron, get her out of my house." Victoria's eyes went wide. "David, no, the money. If we throw her out." "You fool," my father whispered with contempt. "Don't you see? There is no money. Not for us. She was never going to give it this thing. He gestured at me without looking. Has shown her true nature. She's not my daughter. She's not family. Cameron, I said, get her out. Cameron smiled. He'd been waiting for this his entire life, permission to physically dominate me. My pleasure, Dad, he said, grabbing my arm and yanking me toward the door. My shoulder hit the wall hard. My bag, I said, trying to reach back. You get nothing, Ashley shrieked, darting forward. She grabbed my duffel bag, unzipped it, and dumped everything onto the floor. My clothes, my books, scattered everywhere. This is our house. These are our things. Cameron didn't care about the clothes. He just wanted the violence. He grabbed me from behind and shoved me into the hallway. Hard. Get out, Maya, he snarled, pushing me again and again. I stumbled, catching myself on the walls. Victoria and Ashley followed, a chorus of abuse. Ungrateful. Worthless. Just like your real mother. We reached the front door. Cameron ripped it open. Cool Phoenix night air hit my face. It had started to rain. A rare desert storm. Don't ever come back, Cameron bellowed. He gathered his strength and shoved me with both hands. I flew off the porch, unable to catch my balance. I landed hard on my hands and knees in the wet grass, mud instantly soaking through my jeans. I looked up, gasping. The four of them stood framed in the warm doorway of the house I'd served for 23 years. They looked down at me, kneeling in the mud like I was garbage they'd finally taken out. My father stepped forward and slammed the door. The sound echoed through the quiet neighborhood. The deadbolt clicked. I was alone. Kneeling in the mud in the rare Arizona rain, I could hear them faintly through the door, laughing. High-pitched, hysterical laughter. They thought they'd won. They thought I was broken. I stayed there for a moment, letting the rain wash over me. Then slowly I sat back and reached into my purse. I didn't pull out tissues. I wasn't crying. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a contact. The phone rang twice. Chen and Associates, a crisp voice answered. Mr. Chen, I said, my voice steady and clear. It's Maya Richardson. I apologize for calling so late. I stood up, wiping mud from my hands. It's exactly as Grandmother Eleanor predicted, I said. I've been removed from the house. I'm safe, but I need to move into the Scottsdale property tonight. I see, Mr. Chen said, and I heard grim satisfaction in his voice. Do you have the key Mrs. Morgan gave you? I do. I'm heading there now. What my family didn't know, what they'd never bothered to ask, was that my grandparents had given me a key to their estate 2 years ago, a beautiful property in Scottsdale they'd kept separate from everything else. A smart woman always has a place to run to, sweetheart, Grandmother Eleanor had said, pressing it into my palm. Even if it's just running back to yourself. I called a premium Uber. When the black SUV arrived, the driver didn't even blink at my muddy clothes. I climbed in and gave him the address. 20 minutes later, I stood at the gates of my grandparents' Scottsdale estate. The house was stunning. A sprawling southwestern masterpiece worth millions. I'd always felt safe here. I let myself in. The house was cool, quiet, and smelled of grandmother's favorite scent, lavender and old books. I didn't turn on many lights. I just walked to the guest room, my room, and collapsed onto the bed, still in my muddy clothes. I was asleep in minutes. When I woke, golden Arizona sunshine poured through floor-to-ceiling windows. I was wrapped in the softest sheets I'd ever felt. For a moment, I was disoriented. Then it all came back. The lawyer's office, the fight, the door slamming, the rain. I got up and showered in a bathroom made of travertine marble. I found one of Grandmother Eleanor's silk robes and wrapped myself in it. It felt like a hug. I made coffee in the gourmet kitchen and sat in the sunny breakfast nook, looking out over perfectly manicured desert gardens. I was alone. I had $28 million. My entire family hated me, and I felt calm. Finally, I understood what Grandfather Theodore meant when he'd told me, "Peace isn't free, Maya. You have to be willing to pay the price for it." The price was my family. I was on my second cup of coffee when I heard it. A car engine, revving too loud, a horn honking, obnoxious and aggressive. Then another car door, and another. Then the yelling started. "Maya! Maya Richardson! Get out here now!" It was Victoria's voice. Shrill and ugly, I walked to the security panel. On the small screen, I saw all four of them at the gate. They looked like they hadn't slept. Their clothes were wrinkled, their faces puffy with rage. "Open this gate, girl," my father commanded, his preacher voice booming. "You're trespassing on family property." I almost laughed. I just watched them on the screen. Cameron stepped forward, holding something. A key. "Don't worry, Dad. I know where Grandmother kept the spare." He fumbled with an old lockbox, pulled out a key, and tried to jam it into the gate lock. It didn't work. He tried again, forcing it. Nothing. "It's not working," he grunted. "She must have changed it." Of course Grandmother had. She'd told me she changed that code weekly because she knew Cameron snooped. "Maya!" Ashley screamed. "We know you're in there. You're a thief. That house is for my baby. You're stealing from a child." I was about to press the intercom button when a second car pulled up. A sleek black Mercedes, silent and expensive. A man stepped out. Late 60s, tall and thin, with perfectly silver hair. He wore a three-piece suit that probably cost more than my father's car. He carried a slim leather briefcase. He radiated power, the quiet, effortless power of old money and Ivy League degrees. My family stared at him. The man walked past them without a glance and stood directly in front of the camera. He pressed the intercom. "Ms. Maya Richardson." His voice was crisp and professional. "My name is Jonathan Sterling. I was your grandfather's primary counsel from Boston. I believe you're expecting me." "Yes, Mr. Sterling," I said. "Thank you for coming." I pressed the gate button. The massive iron gates began to swing inward. My family saw their chance. "Go! Go!" David yelled. They pushed past Mr. Sterling and rushed up the driveway toward the house like an invading army. I sighed, opened the front door, and stood on the top step in Grandmother's silk robe. They stormed up, not slowing down. Cameron was in the lead. "You're done, Maya," he panted. "We're calling the police." He stopped. They all stopped, frozen on the steps. They'd finally noticed Mr. Sterling, who'd walked calmly up behind them. "Who are you?" David asked, trying to regain his dignity. "Are you David Richardson?" Mr. Sterling asked, his cold blue eyes assessing my father. "I am Reverend David Richardson," my father corrected, puffing his chest. "I see," Sterling said with clear distaste. "And these are the others." "This is our house!" Ashley burst out. "She's trespassing." Mr. Sterling turned to me. "Ms. Richardson, did you change the locks as I advised?" "I did, Mr. Sterling." "And did you sign the eviction notices I had delivered this morning?" "I did." Sterling turned back to my family. "Then you are all in violation of the law. You have 10 seconds to leave. If you're not off this property, I'll call Chief Morrison of the Scottsdale PD. He's already aware of the situation." David's jaw dropped. "The police chief? You can't—" "1," Sterling said, checking his watch. "This is ridiculous!" Victoria shrieked. "2." "You'll hear from our lawyer!" Ashley screamed as Cameron pulled her back. 3. They turned and ran. Actually ran back down the driveway, piling into their SUV in a panic. The car tore out of the gates and disappeared. Sterling watched them go, then turned to me with a thin smile. "Excitable group." "You have no idea," I said. He tapped his briefcase. "Shall we discuss the 28 million Mr. Chen told you about?" "Yes, please." He followed me inside. "That was nothing," he said. "Now, about that 28 million. Your grandfather called it the bait. Now let's talk about the real money. Think my family was shocked by 28 million? Wait until you hear what Mr. Sterling revealed next. The number he said made my knees weak. And when my family finds out, they won't just be angry, they'll be destroyed. Part 3 drops the biggest bomb yet. Subscribe now so you don't miss it, and drop a comment telling me, would you have torn up those papers? Let me know. I led Mr. Sterling into my grandfather's study, a room I'd always loved. Dark oak paneling, leather furniture, and the lingering scent of pipe tobacco. A room of quiet, solid power. Please sit, I said, gesturing to a leather armchair. I sat behind Grandfather Theodore's massive desk. It felt right. Mr. Sterling placed his leather briefcase on the desk but didn't open it immediately. He steepled his fingers and studied me with sharp, analytical eyes. You handled that confrontation at the gate with remarkable composure, Maya, he said. Your grandparents would be very proud. They knew exactly what would happen. They prepared me, I said quietly. They knew who David and Victoria really were. Indeed. Sterling leaned forward slightly. Theodore and Eleanor Morgan were two of the most brilliant and strategic individuals I've ever represented, which brings us to the 28 million. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. As you know, that 28 million is your public inheritance local banks. This house, stocks managed by Mr. Chen. By all accounts, it's a massive fortune. He paused again. And as your grandfather so eloquently put it, it was the bait. I nodded slowly. Bait? Just enough to see who would come with forks and who would come with knives. They all brought knives, Maya. So what's the real story? I asked, my heart beginning to race. Sterling finally reached for his briefcase. The gold latches clicked open. He pulled out a single thick leather portfolio and slid it across the desk to me. In 1998, your grandfather Theodore took a risk. He had a friend from his army days, a brilliant scientist. This friend wanted to start a company in his garage. Something about genetic mapping and pharmaceutical research. It was science fiction back then. Sterling tapped the portfolio. The friend needed $50,000. Your father, David, told Theodore he was a fool, said he should donate it to the church building fund instead. I opened the portfolio. The first page was a stock certificate for a company called GenX Biopharmaceuticals. Your grandfather gave his friend the $50,000, not as a loan, but as an investment, in exchange for 2.5% of a company that didn't even have a name yet. My hands trembled as I turned the pages. That company, GenX Bio, Sterling said, his voice quiet and precise, is now one of the largest pharmaceutical and biotech corporations in the world. That $50,000 investment, which Theodore and Eleanor protected in a series of irrevocable private trusts, is as of yesterday's market close, worth approximately $340 million. The room spun. I stared at the number on the page. $340 million. 300. I couldn't finish the sentence. And 40 million, Sterling completed. They left it all to you. In trust, with me as executor until your 30th birthday, but with you as the sole managing director, effective immediately. I felt a cold, clear power settle into my bones. This wasn't just money. This was justice. This was a weapon. They knew, I whispered, tracing the embossed logo. They knew I'd be the only one who wouldn't destroy it. Ah, but that's the brilliant part, Maya, Sterling said with genuine warmth. They didn't just hope you wouldn't. They trained you. He flipped to another section of the portfolio. Did you really think your part-time position at the Phoenix Public Library was coincidence? Your grandparents endowed that entire wing. It was a safe place for you to be quiet, to be underestimated, to be poor little Maya, while you did your real work. He pointed to a transcript. Those online business courses you've been taking for 5 years? They weren't from community college. I enrolled you. You have a full certificate in nonprofit management from Wharton and a master's in portfolio management from Harvard Business School. Online division. Your grades were exceptional. My mind raced, connecting the dots of my own life, the mysterious scholarships, the free courses, the gentle guidance from professors I'd never met in person. And for the last 3 years, Sterling continued, you've been managing the Eleanor Morgan Literacy Fund, correct? Yes, I said. It was a small charity grandfather set it up for me to learn. Sterling chuckled. Maya, that small charity is a $7 million discretionary fund. You've personally vetted and funded over 50 literacy programs across 4 states. You've managed complex investment portfolios. You've made million-dollar decisions, all under my remote supervision. Your quarterly reports were flawless. He closed the portfolio with a definitive thump. You're not a 28-year-old librarian who just inherited a fortune. You are a 28-year-old foundation director who has been successfully running a multi-million-dollar operation. You've been in training for this exact moment since you were 21. This is just your graduation. I finally understood. The calm I'd felt, the lack of panic, the certainty I'd had when I faced them down. I wasn't a victim who got lucky. I was a soldier who'd just been handed her arsenal. They never looked, I said, thinking of my family. They were so busy calling me the charity case. They never once asked what I was really doing. Their arrogance was Theodore's greatest tool, Sterling said. Their belief that you were lesser became your shield. And now, it's your weapon. He walked to the window, looking out at the desert garden. So, the 28 million is the bait. They'll fight for it. They'll get loud, ugly. They'll sue you, try to discredit you, paint you as a manipulator of 2 senile old people. And what do we do? I asked, standing up with the portfolio in my hands. Sterling looked at me, his eyes sharp. We let them. We let them scream and fight over the 28 million. We let them expose themselves to the world, and you use the 340 million to dismantle them piece by piece, without them even knowing who's hitting them. He smiled coldly. They think they're fighting a librarian. They have no idea they just declared war on a queen. The calm lasted exactly 48 hours. For 2 days, I lived in the beautiful, silent house. I explored grandmother's gardens, read in the library, slept in a bed that felt like safety. I was at peace. Then Sunday came. My phone buzzed while I was working with Mr. Sterling, setting up the formal structures for the trust. It was a text from an old high school friend. Maya, what's going on? My mom just came from church. You need to call me. Before I could respond, another text came. Then another. Then a link. Maya, Sterling said sharply, looking at his laptop. Your father just delivered quite a sermon. He turned his screen toward me. It was a live stream, already viral on the church's Facebook page. The title, A Pastor's Pain, a Father's Prayer. I clicked play. There was my father, Reverend David Richardson, on the pulpit. Not the man in wrinkled clothes from my porch, but the pastor. He wore his finest robes. A spotlight hit his face perfectly. A single tear rolled down his cheek. He was a master performer. Brothers and sisters, he boomed, his voice echoing with manufactured pain. I come before you today, not as your pastor, but as a broken father. The congregation murmured, Amen, Pastor. The devil doesn't come with horns and a pitchfork, no. He comes as a whisper, a temptation. Sometimes, in the form of your own family. The camera panned to Victoria in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief, the picture of a suffering wife. My blessed parents passed into glory, David continued, his voice breaking. But the enemy saw an opportunity. He planted a seed of greed in the heart of my own child, My daughter, Maya. He'd said my name, on camera, to thousands. $28 million, he thundered. The devil offered her 28 million pieces of silver to betray her family, betray her church, betray her God. A woman in the crowd cried out, "No, Jesus! She has taken the money her grandparents intended for the community, money for our youth center, our homeless shelter, and hoarded it for herself." It was a complete, monstrous lie. But they believed him. The crowd was on its feet, hands raised, condemning me. "She has kicked her own mother and father out," he cried. "She sits in a $28 million mansion while the family that raised her, that took her in when she had nothing, is left homeless and broken." "Shame!" someone yelled. "Shame on her." "We must pray for her," David concluded, raising his hands. "Pray that God breaks this spirit of rebellion. Pray for Maya's lost soul, and pray for your church, which has been robbed." I slammed the laptop shut, my hands shaking. "He's painting me as a demon," I whispered, "a thief." "He's painting you as a threat," Sterling corrected grimly. "He's isolating you, turning your entire community against you. He's very effective and very dangerous." But the day wasn't over. Sterling's phone dinged softly. He looked at it, and his face tightened with disgust. "Who is Ashley Richardson?" he asked. He handed me his phone. It was an alert. A GoFundMe page had just gone live. It was linked from a video already at 75,000 views. A TikTok. I pressed play. The video was shaky, filmed in a dark, cramped apartment. Terrible lighting. Ashley sat on a lumpy couch in a stained bathrobe, her hair messy, her face pale and tear-streaked. No makeup. Pure despair. And her hands were wrapped around her very pregnant belly. "Hi, everyone," she whispered, her voice like a wounded bird. I didn't want to do this. Cameron and I are private people." She sniffled. A perfect tear rolled down her cheek. "But we don't know what else to do." The camera panned to an empty corner. That was supposed to be the nursery." She choked on a sob. "We were so excited for our baby. Our little boy." She looked back at the camera, eyes pleading. "But we can't even afford a crib now. My husband's sister Maya, she inherited $28 million and she cut us all off completely." Her voice gained strength, trembling with emotion. "We didn't ask for much, just enough to make sure our baby was safe, that he'd have a future. But she told us we were nothing. She has everything, and our baby has nothing." She broke down completely, burying her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. "I don't know what we're going to do," she cried. "We have medical bills, rent, and she's in that mansion all alone with all that money. How can someone be so cruel? How can she abandon her own nephew?" The video cut to black text appeared. "Pastor David Richardson has been robbed by his own daughter. We've been left with nothing. Please help. Anything helps. God bless." Then the link. The Richardson Family Justice Fund on GoFundMe. Their goal, $250,000. I felt sick. I dropped the phone. $250,000, I said, my voice hollow. "They're using a fake pregnancy." "Is it fake?" Sterling asked sharply. I thought about Ashley. I'd seen her at the reading. She'd looked pregnant. But something felt off. I don't know for sure," I admitted. "Then we need to know," Sterling said, his voice cold with fury. "Because if they're running a con, we need proof, and we need it fast." The comments under the video were a flood of hatred, all aimed at me. "Maya Richardson is a monster. How can you steal from a baby? I hope she rots in that house, alone. Someone needs to find her and teach her a lesson." My phone exploded with notifications, messages, DMs, mentions on every platform. My face was everywhere. The millionaire monster. In less than 24 hours, my family had destroyed my reputation and my life. I was a pariah. The house felt less like a fortress and more like a prison. Then the final blow came. An email from Mr. Patterson, the elderly director of the Phoenix Public Library where I'd worked. Dear Maya, I am so very sorry. I don't believe what they're saying about you. But the board held an emergency meeting. Several members are from your father's church. They said your presence has become a distraction and moral hazard. Maya, they voted to terminate your employment effective immediately. I fought for you. I'm so sorry. Please be safe. They'd taken my community, my reputation, my job, my sanctuary. I looked at Mr. Sterling and something cold and hard settled over me. All right, I said, my voice steady. They fired first. Now it's our turn. Sterling smiled. I thought you'd never ask. You think the sermon and the TikTok were bad? Wait until you see what I uncovered about my family. I hired investigators, the kind who used to work for intelligence agencies, and what they found was so explosive, so criminal, it didn't just destroy my family's case. It destroyed their entire lives. Part 4 is where the Queen strikes back. Don't miss it. Subscribe, hit that like button, and drop a comment. Have you ever been publicly humiliated by family? Let me know your story below. The smear campaign was brutal. For a week, I was a prisoner in the Scottsdale estate. My phone became a weapon of hatred, so I turned it off. The community I'd served, the library patrons, the church members who'd known me since I was 5, they all believed the lie. They saw Reverend David, a pillar of Phoenix. They saw Ashley, a fragile pregnant woman, and they made their choice. I was the enemy. Mr. Sterling became my only connection to the outside world. He worked from the study, his team in Boston digging into everything. His presence was a fortress of legal fury. They're getting sloppy, he said one afternoon, looking at spreadsheets. Your father has been running a community angels fund for 12 years. It appears the only angel benefiting is his Mercedes dealership. We were planning our counteroffensive, quiet, precise, devastating. We'd dismantle them using the $340 million they didn't know about. Leak the truth to the press. Expose the GoFundMe as fraud. We were preparing our weapons when they struck first. A motorcycle courier roared up the driveway. He wasn't delivering a package. He was a process server. Maya Richardson? He asked, holding a thick envelope. Yes, I said. You've been served. He handed me the envelope and vanished. I walked back to the study, the envelope heavy in my hands. Sterling looked up sharply. What is it? I think it's the lawsuit, I said. I opened it. My hands were steady. I was past fear now. There was only cold clarity. It was a lawsuit. A thick, dense stack of legal papers filled with whereas and affidavits. I handed it to Sterling. I watched his face as he read. For the first time ever, I saw him look truly dangerously angry. A muscle in his jaw twitched. Vipers, he whispered, the most emotional word I'd ever heard from him. What does it say? I asked. He placed the papers on the desk carefully, as if they might explode. It's a petition filed by David Victoria, Cameron, and Ashley Richardson against you. They're contesting Theodore and Eleanor's will. I nodded. We expected that. No, Sterling said, his voice like ice. Not like this. They're not just claiming you influenced them. They're claiming you abused them. They're petitioning for control of the estate on the grounds that your grandparents were not of sound mind, that they suffered from advanced dementia and senility. Hot, sick anger rose in my throat. That's insane. Mr. Chen was there. Grandfather was still beating me at chess a month before he died. It doesn't matter, Sterling said, scanning pages. They've built a narrative, and they have proof. He looked up, disgusted. They have affidavits. This is exceptionally dirty. Affidavits from who? He held up a page. Affidavit number 1. From a nurse, Patricia Diaz, a registered nurse who claims she was hired for in-home care for Theodore Morgan in his final months. Nurse Diaz? I searched my memory. I remember her. She was there for maybe 2 days. Grandmother fired her. Said she was incompetent and kept dropping medication. Well, Nurse Diaz has a very different memory, Sterling said grimly. He began reading. I, Patricia Diaz, registered nurse, do swear that during my professional duties, I witnessed alarming behavior from Maya Richardson. Ms. Richardson kept Mr. and Mrs. Morgan in a state of fear. She controlled all access to them, refusing to let their son visit. She controlled their medication. I witnessed her threatening Mr. Morgan, saying, "You'll sign what I tell you, or you won't get your heart pills." Mr. Morgan was terrified. He grabbed my arm once and whispered, "That girl is the devil." I also observed unexplained bruises on Mrs. Morgan's arms, which Maya dismissed as furniture bumps. I could not continue my employment in good conscience. I couldn't breathe. She's accusing me of elder abuse, of assault. It's a calculated, perjured statement, Sterling said, rage shaking his voice, designed to paint you as a sociopath. But there's more. He picked up another affidavit. From Ashley Richardson. Of course, I whispered. Sterling read. I, Ashley Richardson, swear that Maya Richardson has harbored deep pathological jealousy toward me and my husband Cameron her entire life. As the adopted child, she always resented us, the real family. She especially hated my pregnancy. She knew this baby, their first great-grandchild, would be the true heir. Maya became unhinged. She told me, quote, "I don't care about your stupid baby. I'll get those old fools to sign everything over before they know what's happening." She preyed on their age and poisoned them against their own son. She is vindictive, unstable, and dangerous. I fear for my unborn child. I stared at the wall. The lies were so complete, so enormous. It's fiction, I finally said. Yes, Sterling agreed. But it's fiction. A judge is reading. And they filed this. He tapped the last page. A motion for emergency injunction. What does that mean? It means, Sterling said, closing the file, that based on the credible threat of elder abuse and your unstable nature, a judge has granted their motion. As of this morning, the $28 million estate is frozen, all of it. Bank accounts, stocks, this house. You cannot touch a penny. You cannot sell. You cannot transfer. You're legally locked out pending a full hearing. The room went silent. I was sitting in a $28 million house I no longer controlled. My reputation was destroyed. My job was gone. And now my inheritance was frozen. I was the girl with nothing again. They're going to win, I whispered. They're actually going to win. They certainly think so, Sterling said. He walked to the window looking at his phone. In fact, they're celebrating. He turned his phone toward me. It was an Instagram post from Cameron's account, a selfie taken at an upscale restaurant. The whole family was there. David, Victoria, Cameron, and Ashley. All grinning. Raising glasses of champagne, Ashley sat in the center, one hand on her pregnant belly, the other holding champagne. The caption read, "Victory tastes sweet. Step 1 of reclaiming what's ours. Justice is coming. Thank you, Nurse Diaz, for your bravery. Family first. Blessed Richardson justice." They were celebrating, posting it publicly, toasting the nurse who'd committed perjury for them. They were so arrogant, so stupid. I looked at the picture, at their smug, greedy faces, and the fear vanished. It was replaced by cold, clarifying rage. "They're celebrating," I said quietly. "Yes," Sterling replied. I stood up and walked to the desk. I looked at the picture of my family celebrating their lies. Then I looked at Sterling. "Good," I said. Let them fight over the frozen bait. Let them celebrate. They've made one critical mistake. He raised an eyebrow. They froze the 28 million, I said. But they still don't know about the 340 million. I tapped grandfather's desk. Mr. Sterling, I want that investigation team you mentioned, the ex-intelligence operatives. I want them hired tonight. Already done, Sterling said with a thin smile. I had them on retainer. I was waiting for your signal. I want to know everything about Nurse Patricia Diaz. I want to know if Ashley's pregnancy is real, and I want to know every dollar my father ever stole from that church. I picked up the lawsuit. They want a war? Fine. Let's give them one they'll never forget. The next 72 hours were unlike anything I'd ever experienced. The $340 million wasn't just money, it was power, it was access, it was speed. The guest house became our war room. The team consisted of 3 people. Miriam, ex-Mossad operative, late 40s, with cold analytical eyes, she handled human intelligence. Chen Wei, forensic accountant who'd hunted financial criminals for the FBI, brilliant and ruthless. Alex, a 20-something data specialist who looked like they lived on energy drinks and lived to expose liars. They didn't just look at public records, they dove deep. We started with Nurse Patricia Diaz. People like this don't commit perjury for free, Miriam said in her calm, accented voice. And they're almost always in trouble. Chen Wei found it in 90 minutes. Patricia Diaz, he announced, 56 years old, divorced, serious financial problems. She has a $60,000 gambling debt at the Desert Diamond Casino in Tucson. 3 months behind on payments. She's desperate. Tucson, I said. That's only 2 hours from here. Cameron and Ashley went there for a weekend 2 weeks ago. He posted about it. Exactly, Miriam said. I'm already pulling casino surveillance. They're very cooperative when you mention high-level fraud. An hour later, an email arrived with a video file. Got her. Miriam's email read. Sterling and I watched on the study's large monitor. The timestamp was 2 weeks old location, the casino's high-limit cashier cage. There was Ashley, wearing designer sunglasses indoors. And there was Nurse Diaz, looking nervous and over her shoulder. We watched as Ashley slid a thick white envelope across the counter. Diaz picked it up, fanned through the cash inside, and nodded. Then, and this was the beautiful part, Cameron, my idiot brother, actually patted her on the back and grinned at the camera like he'd just closed a business deal. It's a direct cash bribe, on camera, Sterling said, breathless with legal satisfaction. They're amateurs, glorious, arrogant amateurs. Next, the GoFundMe. Alex took that one. Oh, this is easy, they said, fingers flying across keyboards. The GoFundMe deposits into a checking account, Richardson Family Future LLC. Opened 6 weeks ago, Cameron and Ashley are the only signers. Can you see the spending? I asked. Alex laughed. See it? I'm watching it in real time. A screen filled with bank statements. First charge, Alex said. $467 from Theatrical Props Incorporated, Los Angeles. Item description: premium silicone pregnancy prosthetic. Stage 2, 8-month, light skin tone. The air left my lungs. She bought it. The belly. It's fake. High-end movie prop, Chen Wei added, pulling up the receipt. Email confirmation sent to Ashley's Gmail, which she helpfully auto-synced to her calendar. It gets better, Alex said. The We're So Poor Fund has received $118,000 in donations, mostly from elderly church members. And the withdrawals? Let me guess, Sterling said. $27,000, Alex said, clicking. Wired 3 days ago. Not to a lawyer, not to a hospital, to Maserati of Scottsdale. What? I whispered. Your brother Cameron? Alex said, pulling up a credit card statement. While Ashley was crying on TikTok about not affording a crib, took delivery of a 2024 Maserati Levante metallic blue. He even used the GoFundMe debit card for the premium package. Alex pulled up Cameron's private Instagram. There he was, grinning in the driver's seat. Caption: hard work pays off. Blessed. Kark new whip, Kosh Richardson life. He'd called stealing from elderly people hard work. Now for the snake's head, Sterling said. Reverend David. Chen Wei had been working on this quietly for days. Destiny Cathedral is a 501c3 nonprofit, Chen explained. Looks clean. But this Community Angels Fund he preaches about? The one for the youth center? Yes, I asked. It doesn't exist. Not as a church account, it's a private for-profit LLC, D. Richardson Holdings. Your father is the sole owner. For 12 years, he's been directing congregation members to write checks to the Angels Fund, telling them it's for the Church Classic Shell Corporation. What's he been doing with the money? Chen pulled up property records. Buying land, lots of it. Undeveloped plots in Anthem and Cave Creek. He's been using tax-free church donations, funneled through his private LLC, to build a personal real estate empire. There's no youth center, no homeless shelter. Just David. That's not just lying, Sterling said. That's wire fraud, tax evasion, and embezzlement on a massive scale. In 72 hours, we had everything. High-definition video of the bribe receipt for the fake pregnancy belly bank statements for the Maserati from the GoFundMe checkmark incorporation papers, and property deeds proving my father was a criminal. I sat back in grandfather's chair, the evidence covering the desk. Mr. Sterling, I said, my voice shaking, not with fear, but with terrible, cold power. This isn't a lawsuit anymore. This is a criminal conspiracy. Yes, it is, Sterling said. He stacked the files into 3 devastating piles. They're all implicated: perjury, bribery, fraud, embezzlement. My family thought they were going to a civil hearing to fight a librarian for $28 million. They had no idea they were walking into an execution. And I was holding the axe. The courtroom confrontation is next. And trust me, you've never seen anything like this. When that video played on the courthouse screen, when the fake belly was exposed, when the judge's gavel came down, it was complete destruction. Part 5 is the moment everything explodes. Make sure you're subscribed because you do not want to miss this. Drop a comment. What would you do with $340 million? Let me know below. The day of the hearing arrived. It wasn't a full trial, just a preliminary hearing to decide if the injunction freezing my $28 million should become permanent. My family arrived at the Maricopa County Courthouse like they were attending a red carpet premiere. Reverend David wore his finest suit, projecting solemn dignity. Victoria was beside him, draped in black, the picture of a grieving, wronged mother. Cameron looked smug, confident. And Ashley, she was the star of the show. She wore a flowing maternity dress, her hand never leaving that massive prosthetic belly. She looked fragile, victimized, holy, almost. The people in the hallway, members of Destiny Cathedral who'd come to support their pastor, parted for her like she was carrying the Messiah himself. I sat on the opposite side of the aisle with Mr. Sterling. I wore a simple navy dress. I was the villain in their story. The abusive, sociopathic librarian. The air was thick with their self-righteousness. Their lawyer, Mr. Gregory Novak, was a small, sweaty man with a loud tie and even louder confidence. He clearly believed his own case. He thought he was about to destroy me. Your Honor, Novak began, his voice oily and theatrical. We are here today to protect a sacred legacy, the legacy of Theodore and Eleanor Morgan, a legacy being stolen by an ungrateful, unstable, and frankly dangerous woman. He pointed directly at me, Maya Richardson. For 10 minutes, he painted me as a monster. He read from Ashley's affidavit with fake sympathy for the mother-to-be. He read from Nurse Diaz's statement, his voice dripping with outrage about bruises and threats. "Nurse Diaz is here today, Your Honor," Novak said dramatically, gesturing to the back of the courtroom. A brave whistleblower who risked everything to tell the truth. Nurse Diaz, sitting in the back row, tried to look noble. She just looked terrified. "This woman," Novak continued, pointing at me again, "preyed on the elderly. She manipulated them, abused them, and now she's trying to steal this family's future. We ask that the injunction be made permanent and that control of the estate be transferred to my client, Reverend David Richardson, the rightful heir who will manage it for the community as his parents intended." Novak sat down, looking extremely pleased with himself. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s named Judge Maria Castellanos, looked at the affidavits, then at me over her glasses. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice flat. "Your response?" Mr. Sterling stood slowly. He buttoned his suit jacket with deliberate precision. "Your Honor," he said, his voice quiet but carrying through the silent courtroom, "my client has been subjected to a staggering, and frankly amateurish, smear campaign. Mr. Novak's entire case rests on two pillars: the heartfelt affidavit of a loving pregnant mother and the sworn testimony of a concerned nurse." He paused. "If you'll indulge me, I'd like to examine those pillars." "This isn't a full trial, Mr. Sterling," Judge Castellanos said impatiently. "I'm aware, Your Honor. I merely wish to cross-examine the individuals who submitted these sworn and deeply damaging affidavits. I call Mrs. Ashley Richardson to the stand." A ripple went through the courtroom. Novak half stood. "Your Honor, my client is in a delicate condition. This is harassment." "She submitted a 10-page affidavit, Mr. Novak," the judge snapped. "She made herself a witness. Get on the stand, Mrs. Richardson." Ashley's confident smile vanished. This wasn't part of the script. She looked at Cameron, who gave her an encouraging nod. She stood awkwardly, waddled to the witness stand, and placed one hand on the Bible, the other on her belly. She swore the oath. Sterling approached gently. "Mrs. Richardson, thank you for being here. This must be stressful in your condition." "It is," she whispered, looking at the judge. "But I have to do what's right for my baby." "Of course," Sterling said smoothly. "Your affidavit is very moving. You state that you're terrified for your unborn child's future, that Maya has stolen what is rightfully his." "Yes," Ashley said, her voice trembling. "She's been jealous of me, of this baby, from the beginning." "I see. And you are approximately 8 months pregnant, according to your statement?" "Yes," Ashley said, patting the belly. "I'm due in just a few weeks." "A joyous time," Sterling said. "You must have been shopping quite a bit. Baby clothes, cribs, props." Novak shot up. "Objection? Props? What is he implying?" "Sustained," the judge said. "Watch it, Mr. Sterling." "My apologies, Your Honor. I'll rephrase." Sterling walked back to his table and picked up a folder. "Mrs. Richardson, are you familiar with a company called Theatrical Props Incorporated?" Ashley's face went blank. "No, I've never heard of it." "That's very strange," Sterling said. He pulled out a document. "Because we have here, Exhibit A, a credit card receipt from your personal Visa card dated 6 weeks ago, a single charge to Theatrical Props Incorporated." He handed copies to the bailiff, who distributed them to the judge and to Ashley. Ashley stared at the receipt. Her face went from pale to a sick, blotchy white. "The item description is right there, Mrs. Richardson," Sterling said, his voice rising. "One premium silicone pregnancy prosthetic, stage 2, 8-month, light skin tone, for $467. Can you please explain to this court why you purchased a professional-grade fake pregnancy belly?" The courtroom exploded. Novak was on his feet, sputtering. "Your Honor, it's fabricated. It's inadmissible." Cameron leaped up from the gallery. Lies! That's lies! She's pregnant. Tell them, Ashley. Order! Judge Castellanos roared, banging her gavel. Mr. Richardson, sit down and shut your mouth, or I will have you removed in handcuffs. The room fell into shocked silence. Everyone was staring at Ashley. She was shaking, her eyes darting from the judge to me to her husband. Mrs. Richardson, the judge said, her voice ice. Answer the question. I, Ashley stammered. It was for a Halloween party, a costume. It was a joke. A joke? Sterling thundered. Mrs. Richardson, you've been wearing this joke for 2 months. You used this joke to solicit $118,000 on GoFundMe. You used it as the basis for a sworn affidavit accusing my client of hating your unborn child. He slapped another file on the table. Exhibit B, bank records from your Richardson Family Justice Fund, showing a $27,000 payment not to a lawyer, not to a doctor, to Maserati of Scottsdale. He pulled out a photo, Cameron's Instagram selfie in the Maserati. You were buying a luxury car with money you stole using a fake pregnancy. Ashley let out a horrible, animalistic wail. She wasn't acting anymore. She was just a cornered liar. It's not true. Jamal, Cameron, do something. The judge stared at Ashley with pure, undisguised disgust. Mrs. Richardson, you are under oath. Are you or are you not pregnant? Ashley just sobbed. A horrible, guilty, gulping sound. I didn't think so, Judge Castellanos said. This is fraud. You have committed fraud upon this court. But Your Honor, Sterling said, his voice booming, that's not all. This spectacular fraud is just the foundation. The real crime is the elder abuse claim, which rests entirely on the word of Nurse Patricia Diaz. In the back row, Nurse Diaz looked like she was about to vomit. Mr. Novak submitted her affidavit. Sterling continued. We'd like to submit our rebuttal. Exhibit C, Your Honor. High-definition security footage from the Desert Diamond Casino in Tucson, time-stamped 2 weeks ago. Sterling nodded to Alex, who'd been sitting quietly with a laptop. The large monitors in the courtroom, meant for evidence, lit up. The video was crystal clear. There was Ashley in oversized sunglasses. There was Nurse Diaz, looking over her shoulder nervously. And there was Cameron. In dead silence, we watched Ashley slide a thick white envelope across the casino counter. We watched Nurse Diaz pick it up, fan the cash, and nod. We watched Cameron grin stupidly and pat her on the back like they'd just closed a deal. Sterling paused the video on Cameron's idiotic, grinning face. That, Sterling announced, is the plaintiff, Ashley Richardson, handing a $12,000 cash bribe to the defense's star witness, Patricia Diaz, who then, less than 24 hours later, signed a perjured statement accusing my client of felony elder abuse. That was it. The dam broke. Nurse Diaz leaped to her feet in the back. I'm sorry, they made me, she screamed, pointing at my family. They knew about my gambling debts. They said they'd help me. I needed the money. I'm sorry, I lied. I lied about everything. Miss Richardson was good to them. They made me write it. I just signed it. I'm sorry. Please. Absolute chaos. My father's face was ashen. He looked ancient. Victoria stared into space, her mouth hanging open. Cameron looked like he was going to be sick. Order! Judge Castellanos slammed her gavel repeatedly, her face purple with fury. Order in my court! The room fell silent except for Nurse Diaz's sobbing. The judge glared at Novak, who looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Mr. Novak, did you know you submitted a case built on theatrical props, wire fraud, and a bribed, perjured witness? Your Honor, Novak squeaked. I had no idea. I was misled by my clients. Save it for the Bar Association, the judge snapped. The injunction is dissolved. The motion is dismissed with prejudice. The $28 million estate of Theodore and Eleanor Morgan belongs to Ms. Maya Richardson, effective immediately. She wasn't finished. Bailiff, take Miss Diaz into custody for contempt of court and perjury. Nurse Diaz wailed as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. And as for the rest of you, the judge said, glaring at David, Victoria, Cameron, and the sobbing Ashley. Mr. Sterling, I am formally requesting that you forward this entire file, the casino footage, the bank records, the GoFundMe fraud, the receipt for that prosthetic, every last piece, to the district attorney's office. This is no longer a civil matter. This is criminal conspiracy. She raised her gavel. We are adjourned. The sound echoed like a gunshot. It was over. My family sat frozen, shattered. The trap had snapped shut. They were done. They thought they could lie, cheat, and steal their way to millions. Instead, they got handcuffs. But the destruction didn't stop in that courtroom. What happened next, when the news cameras caught them, when the DA came knocking, when their entire world collapsed? That's in part 6, the final chapter. Subscribe now because you need to see how this ends. Comment below. Have you ever gotten the perfect revenge? Tell me your story. The sound of Judge Castellanos' gavel was still echoing when my family finally moved. For 10 full seconds, they'd sat frozen, statues of their own ruin. David was no longer a powerful reverend. He was just a gray-faced old man, his eyes hollow. Victoria clutched his arm, her mouth opening and closing silently. Cameron looked physically ill, his face a pale green. And Ashley, her performance was finally over. She had her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking with real sobs, sobs of pure terror. The bailiff approached Nurse Diaz. Ma'am, you need to come with me. The click of handcuffs was loud and final. Her wail as they led her out the side door was the opening note of their symphony of collapse. Mr. Sterling touched my elbow. Let's go, he whispered. We walk out with dignity. We stood, and as we did, the gallery, which had been silent, erupted. Not in support. In horror. The whispers crackled through the air like electricity. Did you see? A fake belly? She faked a pregnancy? Stole over 100,000? The pastor? Embezzlement? They bribed the nurse. My family finally stood. A slow, clumsy, broken movement. As they turned to leave, they faced the congregation they'd conned, the church members who'd supported them, who'd donated to the GoFundMe, who'd hated me. They were now staring with eyes of cold, hard betrayal. It was a walk of shame. They stumbled down the aisle. David, who was used to crowds parting in reverence, now had people physically recoil from him as if he carried disease. Reverend, one of the oldest deacons said, his voice loud in the silence, "You lied. You lied in God's house." David flinched like he'd been struck. They burst through the courthouse doors, and it got worse. The courtroom battle had drawn blood, and the media smelled it. A local news crew that had been covering another case descended on them like sharks. "Reverend Richardson!" a reporter shouted, shoving a microphone in David's face. "Is it true your daughter-in-law faked a pregnancy? Reverend, did you bribe a witness?" No comment. David muttered, trying to push past Cameron in a moment of sheer stupidity, shoved the cameraman. "Get out of my way." It was a fatal mistake. The camera went sideways but kept rolling. The image of the golden child, the smug man just exposed for fraud, turning violent. It was now on tape. They fled to their old SUV, piling in like criminals fleeing a heist. The vehicle peeled away from the curb with a screech. I watched them go from the courthouse steps. Then Mr. Sterling and I walked calmly to his Mercedes. That, he said as we drove away, was phase 1. The dominoes didn't just fall, they exploded. That night, the internet finished what the courtroom started. Channel 12 News led their broadcast with it. The anchor, a sharp woman named Christina Flores, looked directly into the camera. An unbelievable story from Maricopa County Court today. Prominent Phoenix pastor David Richardson at the center of a bizarre fraud scandal. They ran the story. They didn't have the casino footage, but Sterling's team, helpfully, provided it anonymously by 10 p.m. They showed the clip of Cameron shoving the cameraman. They showed the GoFundMe page with its $250,000 goal, and they showed a screenshot of the receipt, premium silicone pregnancy prosthetic. Ashley's TikTok video, the one where she cried about her baby, was still online. But the comment section had become a digital execution. My grandmother donated $500 to this thief. You faked a baby? What kind of monster are you? I hope you go to jail, you and your useless husband. She stole from the church, stole from her family, stole from everyone. This is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. By midnight, GoFundMe had taken down the page. They didn't just freeze the funds, they issued a public statement about campaigns found in violation of our terms regarding fraudulent claims, and announced they'd be refunding all $118,000 to donors. The money Cameron and Ashley had spent, the Maserati deposit, the luxury purchases, it was all gone. And now they owed it. The next morning, the district attorney, spurred by Judge Castellanos's formal recommendation and massive public outrage, acted swiftly. He didn't just investigate, he sent units. Miriam, still on our payroll, sent me a text. It was a photo. Cameron and Ashley were being led out of their cramped apartment in handcuffs. Cameron, who'd looked so smug in his Maserati selfie, was yelling, "You can't do this! We're the victims here!" Ashley, no longer wearing her prop, was just a thin, pale, terrified woman in sweatpants. Her face was turned away, her hands cuffed behind her back. The charges were read on the courthouse steps: bribery of a witness, conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, perjury. But the DA wasn't finished. He opened a formal criminal investigation into Destiny Cathedral's finances, specifically targeting the D. Richardson Holdings Shell Corporation that Chen Wei had uncovered. The church's accounts were frozen. The Shell Company accounts were frozen. The land deeds David had bought with stolen donation money were seized as assets pending investigation. In a single morning, my father went from being a pillar of Phoenix to a criminal suspect facing multiple felonies. The final domino fell that Sunday. My father, in an act of supreme delusional arrogance, tried to go to church. He tried to get on the pulpit, to preach his way out of it. He believed his voice, his anointing, was more powerful than evidence he was catastrophically wrong. He and Victoria walked up the steps of Destiny Cathedral. He wore his finest suit. She wore her finest hat. They were met at the doors, not by cheering crowds, but by the church board of deacons. "Reverend," the head deacon said, his voice like stone, "you are not welcome here." "This is my church," David blustered. "I am God's anointed." "You are a thief," the deacon replied, loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. "You stole from the elderly. You stole from our children's fund. You stole from widows. You are a disgrace to God's house." Victoria began to cry, real tears this time. "But where will we go? This is our home." The parsonage, the beautiful church-owned house they'd kicked me out of, belonged to the church. "The church board has voted," the deacon said. "You are removed as pastor, effective immediately. The bank has been instructed to foreclose on the parsonage pending the investigation. You have 48 hours to vacate." They were fired. Homeless. Their golden child was in jail. Their reputation was destroyed. Their money was seized. And now they'd lost their home and their church. David and Victoria stood on the sidewalk, surrounded by whispers of the people they'd ruled for 20 years. They had nothing left but each other and the complete ruin they'd built with their own hands. 3 weeks later, The media firestorm eventually died down. Cameron and Ashley were out on bail, their trial set. Their passports were revoked. Their faces were now synonymous with fake baby fraud. David was buried under legal notices. The embezzlement case against him was ironclad. His trial was coming. I watched it all from the quiet of my grandfather's study. The $28 million was mine again, but I hadn't touched it. I was busy with the real work. Restructuring the $340 million trust, learning to command a foundation, becoming the woman my grandparents had trained me to be. The house had become my world, until one afternoon when the gate intercom buzzed. I looked at the security monitor and felt nothing, just cold, distant curiosity. It was them, David and Victoria. But they were unrecognizable. The power, the arrogance, the righteous fury, all gone. They looked elderly broken. David's expensive clothes were replaced by a wrinkled polo shirt. Victoria's hair was gray at the roots, her face bare and lined with exhaustion. They looked small, defeated, exactly like what they were, homeless, friendless, and futureless. They stood outside my gates, the same gates they'd tried to storm weeks ago, and looked at the camera like beggars. Victoria pressed the button, her hand shaking. I pressed talk. "What do you want?" My voice echoed out, cold and metallic. Victoria flinched. "Maya, baby, is that you?" "What do you want?" I repeated. "Maya, please," Victoria cried, and for the first time I heard real tears. Not manipulation, pure desperation. "Baby, please. You have to help us. We have nowhere to go." David stared at the ground, unable to look at the camera. "They took the house," Victoria choked out. "The deacons locked us out. They took everything. The cars, the accounts. It's all frozen. Marcus, David, all of it. Amara, we spent last night in a Motel 6. We have nothing." "And that's my problem how?" I asked. David visibly recoiled. He finally looked up, his eyes bloodshot and hollow. "Maya," he said, his voice a broken whisper. "Daughter, please, don't do this. We're your family." "Family?" I let the word hang in the air. The family that threw me out in the rain? The family that sued me? That called me an abuser? That faked a pregnancy to steal from me? That family? "We were wrong," Victoria shrieked, clawing at the bars. "Okay? We were wrong. We admit it. We were desperate. We made mistakes. But we're sorry, Maya. I'm your mother. I'm begging you. Don't let your own parents die on the street." I walked out of the house down the long driveway. I didn't open the gate. I stood on my side, looking at them through the iron bars like they were prisoners. Victoria saw me and her face crumpled with horrible, desperate hope. "Maya, oh, thank God. You still have it, don't you? The $28 million. The judge gave it back to you." David stepped forward urgently. "You have it. We know you do. And it's so much money, Maya. Too much for one person. Just a little. That's all we're asking. Buy us a small place, a condo. Just enough to survive. We'll disappear. We'll never bother you again. Just a small piece. Please." They were still doing it. After everything, the lies, the fraud, the criminal charges, they were still standing there begging for money. They thought that's what this was about. I looked at my mother, at my father, and I finally understood. They were incapable of change, incapable of remorse, only capable of wanting the $28 million. I said, my voice flat. "The money you tried to steal, the money you lied about." "We're sorry," David whispered. "No, you're not," I said. "You're just sorry you got caught. But it doesn't matter anyway." I paused. "There is no $28 million. Victoria's face went slack. "What?" "The judge gave it to you." The judge gave it to me, I said, and I gave it away. All of it. Gave it? To who? David asked, panic rising in his voice. I donated it. A $28 million endowment to the University of Arizona. The Eleanor Morgan Scholarship Fund. Full-ride scholarships in perpetuity for first-generation students from Phoenix, whose families tell them they should stay home and not have foolish dreams. My mother's knees buckled. She physically sank to the ground, clutching the bars. No, no, you didn't. You're lying. You wouldn't. She would, David whispered, staring at me with new horror. You fool. He looked at Victoria on the ground. Don't you see? She gave it all away. She destroyed us for nothing. She's as poor as we are. Nothing, I asked quietly. You think I'm left with nothing? I shook my head. That's always been your problem. You're so loud, so greedy, so focused on the shiny thing right in front of you that you never once asked the important question, what did grandmother and grandfather really build? David looked confused. They were retired. They had investments. You were fighting over bait, I said. The $28 million was the test. And you failed spectacularly. Victoria looked up from the ground, her face streaked with dirt and tears. Bait? What are you talking about? You thought I was a librarian, I said. You thought I was the charity case, the disappointment. You were so busy calling me worthless. You never realized my grandparents were training me to manage the real inheritance. I stepped back from the gate. The Bishop Family Trust, the $340 million pharmaceutical and biotech portfolio that Grandfather Theodore built from a $50,000 investment, the money you never even knew existed. The silence was absolute, heavier than the courtroom. It was the sound of two entire worldviews collapsing into dust. David's mouth opened. No sound came out. Victoria just stared, all emotion draining from her face, replaced by a vast, empty understanding. 300. David finally stammered. And 40 million, I finished. You were fighting over crumbs while I owned the entire bakery. You were so desperate to steal scraps from my plate. You never realized I was already the queen. I looked at them one last time, defeated, broken, annihilated. Now please get off my property. The police are already on their way for trespassing. They should arrive in about 30 seconds. I turned my back on them. I didn't look back. I heard my father's weak, pathetic cry. Maya, wait. Please. I walked into my house, closed the door, and locked it. I was finally, completely free. 6 months later, I didn't watch the trials, but I followed the outcomes. Cameron and Ashley pled guilty to multiple counts of fraud. They each got 3 years in federal prison and were ordered to repay the full amount stolen from the GoFundMe, with interest. The Maserati was seized and auctioned. David's trial was longer, but the evidence was overwhelming. Wire fraud, tax evasion, embezzlement. He got 7 years. Victoria, as an accomplice who'd helped hide assets, got 2. Nurse Diaz cooperated with prosecutors and got probation. Destiny Cathedral appointed a new pastor and rebranded as New Hope Community Church. They wanted to distance themselves from the scandal. The new pastor's first act was to launch a real youth center, funded by anonymous donations that may or may not have come from the Eleanor Morgan Literacy Fund. As for me, I stood in my grandfather's study, my study now, looking at a proposal. The West Phoenix Urban Renewal Project, $60 million for community centers, libraries, and affordable housing. My father had always tried to get on the board of this project, to funnel money to his fake charity. Grandfather Theodore had always quietly blocked him. I picked up my phone and called the governor's office. Governor Martinez, I said when he answered. This is Maya Richardson. I've reviewed the Urban Renewal Project. The Morgan Family Trust is in $60 million. Full funding. There was a sharp intake of breath. Ms. Richardson, Maya. That's incredible. Transformative. Your grandparents would be so proud. I believe they would be, I said. However, I have one non-negotiable condition. Anything, he said quickly. I see that Reverend David Richardson is still listed as an honorary board member, given his current legal situation. I need his name permanently and publicly removed from this project and any other city initiative before we transfer funds. The pause was brief. Consider it done, Ms. Richardson. His name will be expunged by morning. Wonderful. Please have your office send the paperwork to Mr. Sterling. We'll wire the first installment tomorrow. I hung up. With one phone call, I'd erased my father's last remaining legacy and replaced it with something real, something good. I looked at the portrait of grandmother Eleanor and grandfather Theodore on the wall, painted on their 50th anniversary. They were smiling, their eyes full of wisdom and quiet knowing. I cleaned house, grandfather, I whispered. It's clean now. I sat at the desk, my desk, and opened the next proposal. There was so much work to do, so much good to build. They say blood is thicker than water. But they don't tell you that sometimes that blood is toxic. They don't tell you that family is just a word, and that true belonging is earned through actions, not biology. My family called me the black sheep my entire life. They meant it as an insult. They saw me as lesser, as the charity case, as the girl in the corner. They never realized that while they polished their masks and built their lies, my grandparents were nurturing that black sheep, feeding her, training her, sharpening her teeth. They didn't want a sheep. They wanted a wolf. And when the time came, the wolf was all that was left. The sweetest revenge isn't screaming or fighting. It's not dragging your enemies down into the mud with you. The sweetest revenge is living a life of such undeniable success, such quiet, unshakable power that their entire existence becomes irrelevant. It's using the power they tried to steal from you to build something beautiful. It's taking the stones they threw and building your foundation. They tried to erase me. They tried to steal my past and my future. But in the end, all they did was clear the path. They removed themselves from my life and gave me the greatest gift: the freedom to become the woman my grandparents always knew I could be. I am not defined by their greed. I am defined by my grandparents' love and by the work I do in their name. Have you ever been the black sheep in your own family? Have you ever felt underestimated or overlooked by the people who should have supported you? Drop your story in the comments below. Your resilience is a testament to your strength, and you never know who needs to hear it. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever overcome those who doubted you, hit that like button and subscribe. Share this with anyone who needs to be reminded that they are not alone, that their family's opinion does not define their destiny. Remember, your worth is not a number in a bank account, and it's certainly not decided by those who refuse to see it. Your value is in your resilience, your quiet strength, and your ability to build a life that is authentically yours. Thank you for watching. This is Maya Richardson, signing off.